What happens when a Hollywood star known for his unwavering faith faces a talk show host notorious for pushing boundaries? On a crisp October evening in 2025, Jonathan Roumie, the beloved actor who portrays Jesus in the global phenomenon The Chosen, stepped onto the set of The Rosie O'Donnell Show to promote the latest season of his series and his new docuseries, Jonathan and Jesus. The audience buzzed with anticipation, eager to hear from the man whose portrayal of Christ had touched millions. But no one, not Roumie, not the producers, not the live audience, was prepared for what would unfold. This wasn't just an interview. It was a moment that would ignite a firestorm and go down in television history. The studio of The Rosie O'Donnell Show was alive with energy. Bright lights bathed the stage in a warm glow, the iconic red curtains framing a cozy set with plush armchairs and a sleek coffee table. The audience, a diverse mix of fans clutching the Chosen merchandise and curious onlookers, filled the seats, their chatter mingling with the hum of cameras and the faint clatter of crew members adjusting equipment. The air smelled faintly of coffee and hairspray, a quintessential talk show vibe. Rosie O'Donnell, the host known for her brash humor and no-holds-barred style, stood ready to command the stage, her signature grin flashing as she waved to the crowd. Her co-hosts, comedian Michelle Collins and journalist Nora Vincent, sat to her left, exchanging light banter as the show's theme music faded. Jonathan Roumie entered to thunderous applause. Dressed in a tailored navy blazer and crisp white shirt, he exuded calm confidence, his warm smile disarming the room. He waved humbly, his eyes scanning the audience as if searching for familiar faces. The crowd roared louder, some holding up signs that read, "We love you, Jesus!" and "The Chosen changed my life." Rosie, standing at center stage, clapped along, but her eyes glinted with something sharper, a hint of mischief that only those familiar with her style would recognize. "Ladies and gentlemen, the man who's got everyone talking about faith, Jonathan Roumie," she announced, her voice booming through the studio. The audience cheered again, unaware that the friendly atmosphere was about to unravel. Jonathan Roumie was no stranger to the spotlight, but he carried himself with a quiet dignity that set him apart. Known for his transformative role as Jesus in The Chosen, a crowd-funded series about the life of Christ, Roumie had become a beacon for millions, blending artistry with deep-rooted faith. A New York native with Egyptian and Irish heritage, he was baptized Greek Orthodox but converted to Roman Catholicism, a journey that shaped his public persona. His work extended beyond acting. He narrated for the Catholic prayer app Hallow, spoke at events like the March for Life, and live-streamed prayers to thousands on Instagram. Off-screen, he was a man of principle, advocating for humility, charity, and the sanctity of life. Yet beneath his composed exterior lay a vulnerability, a man who had faced financial struggles and self-doubt before The Chosen changed his life. Rosie O'Donnell, the host, was a television titan. Her show, revived in 2024 after a long hiatus, thrived on her bold personality and willingness to tackle controversial topics. Known as the Queen of Nice, in the 90s, Rosie had evolved into a more confrontational figure, unafraid to challenge guests with pointed questions. Her motivations were complex, a mix of chasing ratings, genuine curiosity, and a personal skepticism toward organized religion, shaped by her public criticisms of the Catholic Church in the early 2000s. Tonight, she saw Roumie as a chance to spark a conversation that could dominate headlines. The co-hosts and crew, Michelle Collins, a quick-witted comedian, and Nora Vincent, a sharp-tongued journalist, flanked Rosie, their roles often to balance her intensity with humor or reason. Michelle fidgeted with her notecards, sensing the potential for drama, while Nora sat poised, her expression unreadable. Behind the scenes, producers whispered into headsets, their eyes darting between monitors. Camera operators adjusted lenses, capturing every angle of the stage. The audience, a mix of The Chosen devotees and casual viewers, leaned forward, some already pulling out phones to record what they hoped would be a memorable interview. The interview started smoothly. Rosie welcomed Roumie with a warm hug, her laughter filling the studio as she complimented his performance in The Chosen. "You've got people crying in their living rooms, Jonathan," she said, settling into her chair. "This show, it's huge. Tell us about Season 5 and this new docuseries, Jonathan and Jesus. Roumie smiled, his voice steady as he shared his gratitude for the series' impact. It's been a journey, he said, his hands clasped. The Chosen is about showing Jesus as a relatable human, and the docuseries dives into how playing him has changed me personally. It's about faith, struggle, and finding purpose. The audience applauded, some wiping tears. Michelle chimed in. I watched the first season in one weekend, couldn't stop. You make it so real. Nora nodded, adding, it's rare to see faith portrayed with such nuance. The mood was warm, almost reverent. But Rosie leaned forward, her smile tightening. Okay, Jonathan, let's get real for a second, she said, her tone shifting. The audience quieted, sensing a change. You're out here playing Jesus, talking about faith, doing these Instagram prayers, hundreds of thousands of people watching. But isn't that a bit performative? I mean, are you selling spirituality or living it? The question landed like a stone in still water. The studio fell silent, the hum of cameras suddenly louder. Roumie's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly, his eyes locking onto Rosie's. That's a fair question, he said, his voice calm but firm. For me, faith isn't a performance. It's who I am. I've been broke, lost, and at rock bottom. Prayer, real prayer, got me through. Sharing that online or through The Chosen isn't about selling anything, it's about connecting with people who feel the same struggles. The audience murmured approval, some nodding vigorously. Michelle tried to lighten the mood, chuckling. Well, I'd say you're doing a pretty good job connecting. But Rosie wasn't done. She leaned back, crossing her arms, her expression skeptical. Sure, but let's talk about the optics. You're a Hollywood actor, right? You're on this Catholic prayer app, you're speaking at anti-abortion rallies, you're out here as this modern-day saint. Doesn't that feel a little convenient? Like you're capitalizing on a trend. Faith is hot right now, isn't it? The air grew thick with tension. Nora shifted uncomfortably, her pen tapping against her note cards. A few audience members gasped, while others whispered to their neighbors. Roumie's jaw tightened, his fingers brushing the edge of his chair. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the faint tremor in his hands. Rosie, he said, his voice steady but laced with emotion. My faith isn't a trend. It's not a brand. I was praying the Divine Mercy Chaplet when I had nothing, no money, no roles, no hope. I'm not here to capitalize on anything. I'm here because I believe in something bigger than myself. The audience erupted in applause, but Rosie's smile didn't waver. She leaned forward undeterred. Okay, but you're dodging the hard part. You're out there pushing these traditional values, Catholicism, pro-life, all that. What about the people who don't buy into it? What about the ones who think you're just another actor using Jesus to sell tickets? The words cut deep, and the studio felt like it was holding its breath. Producers exchanged frantic glances backstage, one mouthing, "Do we cut to commercial?" But the cameras kept rolling, and Roumie's eyes burned with a quiet intensity. What happened next would leave everyone speechless. The silence in the studio was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the cameras and the nervous shuffle of feet in the audience. Jonathan Roumie sat upright, his hands now clasped tightly in his lap, his dark eyes fixed on Rosie O'Donnell. Her accusation that he was using Jesus to sell tickets hung in the air like a challenge. The audience, a mix of The Chosen fans and casual viewers, leaned forward, some clutching their phones, already recording. The red light on the main camera blinked steadily, capturing every micro-expression. Backstage, a producer hissed into a headset, "She's pushing too hard, get ready to cut." But the show was live, and there was no turning back. Rosie leaned forward, her elbows on the table, her voice dripping with a mix of curiosity and provocation. "Come on, Jonathan," she pressed. "You're a smart guy. You know how this looks. Hollywood's full of people jumping on bandwagons, veganism, mindfulness, now faith. You're telling me you're not riding this wave? You're not cashing in on the Jesus brand?" Her words were sharp, each one landing like a jab. The audience gasped, a few boos rippling through the crowd. A woman in the front row, wearing a The Chosen t-shirt, shook her head, her eyes wide with disbelief. Roumie's face tightened, a flicker of anger crossing his features before he steadied himself. He took a slow breath, his voice low but resonant. Rosie, I get where you're coming from. Skepticism's fair, it's healthy. But let me be clear, I don't have a Jesus brand. I have a life that's been transformed by faith. When I was sleeping on friends' couches, wondering if I'd ever work again, I wasn't thinking about trends. I was praying for survival. His words carried weight, each syllable measured but laced with raw honesty. The audience murmured, some nodding, others wiping tears. A man in the back row whispered to his neighbor, "He's the real deal." Michelle Collins, the co-host, tried to diffuse the tension. Okay, let's take a step back," she said, forcing a laugh. "Jonathan, your work in The Chosen, it's inspiring people. I mean, my mom binged it and called me crying." The audience chuckled, grateful for the brief reprieve, but Rosie wasn't swayed. She waved a hand dismissively, her eyes locked on Roumie. "Sure, it's inspiring," she said, "but let's talk about the other stuff. You're out there at these rallies, March for Life, right? You're pushing this Catholic agenda, telling people how to live. Doesn't that feel a little judgmental? Like you're saying your way's the only way?" The question hit like a thunderclap. The studio fell silent again, the air thick with anticipation. Nora Vincent, the other co-host, shifted uncomfortably, her pen frozen mid-tap. She opened her mouth to speak but closed it, glancing at the producer's booth. A camera operator adjusted his lens, zooming in on Roumie's face. His jaw clenched, and for a moment, his fingers gripped the armrest so tightly his knuckles whitened. Then, slowly, he leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "Rosie, I don't tell anyone how to live," he said, his voice steady but edged with intensity. "I share what I believe because it saved me. I've been open about my struggles, depression, doubt, feeling like I wasn't enough. My faith, my work, my voice, it's about offering hope, not judgment." The audience erupted in applause, the sound swelling like a wave. A few people stood clapping fiercely, while others whispered excitedly. Rosie raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Hope's great," she countered, "but when you're at these rallies, you're not just talking hope. You're taking sides on issues that divide people, abortion, marriage, all that. You're a public figure, Jonathan. Don't you think that alienates half your audience? Or is that the point, to preach to the choir?" Her tone was sharp, almost mocking, and the audience reacted with a mix of gasps and murmurs. A young man in the crowd muttered, "She's out of line," loud enough for those nearby to nod in agreement. Roumie's eyes narrowed, but he didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he leaned back, his posture calm but resolute. "I'm not here to alienate anyone," he said. "I'm here to be honest. My faith shapes my choices, just like your beliefs shape yours, Rosie. I speak at events like March for Life because I believe in the dignity of every life. That's not about division, it's about conviction. If that makes someone uncomfortable, I'm okay with that. Truth isn't always comfortable." His words were firm, delivered with a quiet strength that silenced the room. Even Rosie paused, her fingers drumming on the table as if recalibrating her approach. Michelle jumped in again, her voice overly bright. "Wow, okay, that's powerful. Let's talk about the docuseries. Jonathan and Jesus sounds so personal." But Rosie ignored her, leaning closer to Roumie. "Conviction's fine," she said, her voice dropping to a challenging whisper. "But when you're out there playing Jesus, praying on Instagram, standing on those stages, it's easy to look like you're holier than thou. People see you and think, oh, here's Mr. Perfect, telling us we're not good enough. You don't see that?" The accusation was personal now, cutting into Roumie's character. The studio felt like a pressure cooker, every eye on Roumie, waiting for his response. Roumie's face was a study in restraint, but his eyes burned with something deeper, hurt, resolve, maybe both. He leaned forward, his voice low but carrying the weight of a man who'd faced worse than a talk show ambush. "Rosie," he said, "I'm the furthest thing from perfect. I've failed, I've fallen, I've questioned everything. Playing Jesus doesn't make me a saint, it makes me more aware of how much I need grace. If people see me as holier than thou, that's their lens, not my intention. I'm just a guy trying to live authentically, and if that's threatening, maybe the question isn't about me, it's about why honesty feels like a threat. The studio froze. The audience sat in stunned silence, some with hands over their mouths, others nodding slowly. A woman in the third row dabbed her eyes with a tissue, her phone still recording. Michelle's jaw dropped slightly, and Nora's pen finally stopped tapping. Backstage, a producer whispered, "This is going viral." Rosie blinked, caught off guard for the first time. Her smirk faltered, and she opened her mouth to respond, but Roumie wasn't finished. He stood, his movements deliberate, the microphone clipped to his blazer catching every word. "I came here to talk about the chosen, about hope, about faith," he said, his voice rising with conviction. "But if you want to make this about tearing people down, I'm not playing that game." The audience roared, a mix of cheers and gasps filling the studio. Rosie's face flushed, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "We're just having a conversation, Jonathan," she said, her tone defensive. "This is what we do here, ask the hard questions." But her words sounded hollow against the swell of support for Roumie. He shook his head, a faint, weary smile crossing his lips. "There's a difference between hard questions and cheat shots," he said. "You know it, and so do they." He gestured to the audience, who erupted again, some standing in solidarity. The cameras swiveled, capturing the chaos. A producer signaled frantically from the booth, but the director mouthed, "Keep rolling." Michelle tried to interject, her voice shaky. "Okay, let's all take a breath. Jonathan, tell us about the new season." But the moment was beyond salvage. Roumie unclipped his microphone, the small act reverberating like a thunderbolt. "I think we're done here," he said, his voice calm but final. He turned to the audience, his eyes softening. "Thank you for your support. Keep seeking truth, it's worth it." With that, he walked off the stage, his footsteps echoing in the stunned silence, the red curtains parting as he disappeared.